Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of the WST Bombers Report. My name is Connor Hrabchak, soon to be joined by Zach Schnitzer from Bonfire Sports Winnipeg. They went live right after the game on Saturday as the Bombers lost to the Elks 25-20, and we're going to break it all down here. The Bombers, coming off a bye, go to Edmonton and drop a disappointing game to fall to 8-8. If you're enjoying the WST Bombers Report so far this season, thank you so much for watching this episode, and hit the like button down below. Lets YouTube know that we are putting out some great Blue Bombers content. Let's bring in my co-host, Zach Schnitzer, aka Schnitzy. Zach, how are you doing today? Thanksgiving weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. And you got a nice lid on there, the Chell Chit Chat.
Yeah. Shout out to your compadre, Liz Hood, and her show, Chell Chit Chat, which I enjoy, especially the latest episode with Patrick Lyone's partner. And it was about mental health, which is a cause very dear to my heart, Connor. So check that episode out. So shout out to Liz. I'm doing well. Yeah, long weekend. I desperately needed one. I was tired this week. The Bombers, unfortunately, blew it last night, as we all saw, but had a great time at Silver Heights Restaurant, one of our sponsors at Bonfire. Thank you to Bardot for planning that. We had about 20 people come out, Connor. So we'll have to get you out there next time, have some ribs. And I still have some ribs waiting for me for lunch, so I am looking for it. So that definitely took the sting out of the game a little bit.
Yeah, to share it with some Bonfire Sports listeners, some WSTers.
Yeah,
we love to see it. Let's dive right into this game, Zach, because there's a lot to get to. The Bombers, like I said, falling 25-20 to the Edmonton Elks on Saturday night. Here's how the numbers kind of shook out. Net yardage, the Bombers outgained the Elks barely, 326 to 307. The Winnipeg had more first downs, 18-15. Winnipeg had more big plays, 3-2. But Winnipeg had more turnovers. And we're going to sound like a broken record, I'm sure, a few times on today's program. And we'll get into how these turnovers occurred. But 3 turnovers for the Bombers, 0 for the Edmonton Elks. And to me, that's the game right there, the Bombers. And you will get into each turnover and how they each affected the game, but they were detrimental to the Bombers in their chances of winning this one. Zach, what is kind of just your broad takeaway from this game as the Bombers, coming out of the bye, drop a disappointing one to a team that's chasing them for a playoff spot in the West?
I think you nailed it, Connor, and it's almost now boring and tedious to say it because we've said it so many times on all our Bombers reports. When the Bombers lose, it's because they turn the ball over. Zach doesn't turn the ball over, they tend to win, or they're right in it, right? So it was incredibly disappointing, Connor. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess, because of the bye, they throttled Hamilton, who is leading the East Division. Hamilton, who makes the most interceptions in the league, and Zach didn't turn the ball over, lit them up. You're thinking, okay, they're going on the road to the Elks. Collaros is 12-0 in his last 12 games versus the Elks.
Yep.
They hadn't beaten the Bombers in 13 games. Bombers are 18-2 coming off the bye in the last few years. Like, I was expecting Collaros to go off. This is the worst secondary in the CFL. The Edmonton allows the most pass yards. I'm not going to get into all the statistics, but they have the worst pass defense in the CFL. And Zach Collaros laid an egg again. He should have been picked off, Connor, 5 times. He threw 5 interceptable balls. 2 of them were picked off. Guys were open that he should have hit. He either underthrew them. There was one where he didn't step into it. Him and Jareth Stearns on that 3rd and 4 weren't on the same page. There were guys open when he did throw picks or didn't connect with Stearns on that deep ball. Dylan Mitchell was open on one of them. Joey Corcoran was open on that 2nd and 4, which he threw to Wilson. Now Wilson was open at the end of the game, the 2nd and 4, which led to the 3rd and 4 when they turned it over on downs. But Wilson falls down. I'm not going to put that on Zach. Wilson, if he stays up, he would have catches it. But there was a shorter throw available on Corcoran, who ran a nice little in and out route to the flat, and Zach just didn't connect with him. So I know it's not all on Collaros, right? This is a team game, but This is incredibly disappointing. And now you have Collaros, who has 16 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, tied for the most in the CFL, highest interception rate in the CFL. and you're just not going to win football games like that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. And it doesn't just bog down to the quarterback. But when you look at this game, I mean, the Bombers ran for 125 yards for almost a 9-yard average, 14 carries, 8.9 yards per carry for 125 yards. The defense held Edmonton's yards per attempt to 5.9, only 142 passing yards for Cody Fajardo and this offense. It was a few plays that really burned the Bombers, and when it's a few plays here and there, the turnovers get magnified that much more. The Justin Rankin long touchdown on 3rd and 2, the special teams fumble, scoop and score, which ended up as a touchdown for Edmonton. The interception, the 3rd and 4 late in the game for where Zach Collaros goes deep to Jarrett Stearns, and they miscommunicate. He's nowhere near where the ball ends up. And they take a deep shot on 3rd and 4 with the game on the line, and they miss it. So this game did, in my opinion, really come down to a few plays here and there, because outside of those, maybe 3 or 4 plays where the Bombers very clearly lost the game, I thought they played pretty well. And when looking at those plays, those are what we've been harping on all season long as what needs to be eliminated from kind of the Bombers system. The quarterback turnovers, whether it's Chris Streveler or Zach Collaros, they're both turning the ball over far too much. And you brought up the 16 touchdowns to 15 interceptions ratio there. That's just not good enough. And the Bombers know that. And Zach Collaros knows that. And
I honestly too, like I agree. Like the Bombers could have won this game. Like it was there for them, but I don't think they deserved.
Oh,
they did. Yeah,
no,
they didn't deserve to. And I actually think the final score, Connor, flattered the Bombers. Wow. And I'll say that because Blanchard, their field goal kicker for Edmonton, misses a 43-yarder, which is makeable, which Babel returns 58 yards, flips field position. And then he misses a 23-yarder at the end of the half after Zach was picked off on a terrible underthrow, and Demski gets hurt, unfortunately, and that really hurt the Bombers. But we'll get to that in a second. So 2 missed field goals. The Elks had 100 yards of penalties. That's almost a full football field. I was joking last night on Bonfire. That is a full football field in 2027. So that hurts the Elks. They should have picked off Collaros 3 more times. I think they dropped 3 catchable balls, and the Bombers kind of they get that 35-yard touchdown to Ontaria Wilson, Connor, but it was underthrown. It was into double coverage. That Edmonton Cordell Jackson, I believe it was, drops the ball. It should have been picked off. It's a miracle. We're going to talk about it, but it's a miracle catch. Like 99.9 times out of 100, that there's no touchdown there. That's an interception. That was crazy. So, without that, and with the missed field goals and penalties, like this game could have been way worse.
I agree. And you talked about the concern for Nic Demski. We'll talk about that a little bit later on when we preview the Bombers' upcoming game. But just running through a little bit more of the stats here, Brady Oliveira. I mean, it's becoming death taxes, and Brady Oliveira hitting 100 yards rushing at this point. 12 carries, 117 yards, 9.8 per carry. He was fantastic. 34-yard was his longest run. Had 4 carries, of 10 yards or longer. Those were huge. He also was the Bombers' leading receiver in terms of catches. He had 7 catches for 30 yards and 24 yards after the catch. So a lot of dump offs that he gained some yardage on. Jarrett Stearns was next at 5 catches for 43 yards. Ontaria Wilson had 4 for 65 and that miraculous touchdown, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Kevin Sklercius had 2 for 26. And then Michael Krysek, Corcoran, Demski, Mitchell all had 1 catch. And that was really it for the Bombers offense. Defensively, again, not really racking up the sacks or the interceptions. There were no turnovers forced by the Blue Bombers defense. But I do want to ask you just your thoughts on one play, Zach. And I know you guys talked about it last night on the Bonfire post-game show. The special teams touchdown for the Elks. How weird was that? I mean, Javon Leake catches the ball, he fumbles. The Bombers, they swarm. Like there are multiple able bodies around that ball to grab that ball. I counted 4 or 5 kind of jumping into the pile. You think one of them has got to get, and this was at a point in the game too, where if the Bombers did recover that fumble, they were in a field position battle where their defense was getting stops, but their offense wasn't moving the ball. So it just felt inevitable at some point Edmonton was going to score because they were starting at Winnipeg's 45-ish on every single drive. And you thought, oh, this fumble can bail them out of that field position game. Yeah. And somehow the swarming of the bodies does not result in the Bombers getting the ball. And it pops out and an Edmonton player picks it up. And because all of the Bombers players are kind of diving for a fumble, no one's there. He houses it. To me, that was one of the weirder touchdowns I've ever seen. And one that, I mean, the Bombers made a good play. They forced a fumble on a punt return. Yeah. Like it was that close to being a massive turning point in the game for the Bombers, and then flipped completely the other way with a touchdown for Edmonton.
Totally, man. Like that you could say that was the turning point of the game. Even like in a close game like this, 25-20, the Bombers get that ball, and Nick Hallett makes an amazing play to punch that ball out of Javon Leake's hands. If they get that ball, they're only down 1 score. They take momentum back after losing it on that 64-yard Justin Rankin rumble for the touchdown. Mm-hmm. They, absolutely huge in this game and kind of a fluke. So here's the thing. As you said, a bunch of Bombers converged on this ball. And when we were watching the replay last night on Bonfire After Dark, I had argued that 15th overall pick in the second round of the 2025 CFL draft, linebacker Jalen Smith, number 39, looked like he could have just fallen on the ball rather than trying to scoop it and run back. But upon the replay, like, his momentum was carrying him forward and the ball was bouncing. Like, it's a tough play, but I think in a game like this where you make so many mistakes as the Bombers did, you can't overcome a fluky play that goes against you. Had the Bombers thrown less interceptions and kept drives going, Connor, I think that they could have overcome this kind of fluke touchdown against. But in a game like this, it just was a backbreaker.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And the last thing I want to touch on before we move on to our segments and some questions, we got some great questions this week because the Bombers lost, of course. I feel like it's a running joke. It's a running joke on this program. We get so many questions when the Bombers lose. But the last thing I want to ask you about, and you alluded to it earlier when talking about Zach Collaros, was the underthrows. It felt like Zach Collaros' deep ball accuracy was either way too much club, if you will, and then way too short. And even the Ontaria Wilson touchdown was a familiar sight in the game where you see a receiver open downfield and they're having to run back to the ball. The play that Nic Demski got hurt on was severely underthrown. Zach Collaros didn't really step into it, threw it super high in the air, and it was basically a punt return for the DB who stood there, could have fair caught it if he wanted. Not a thing in the CFL, but you get my point. We're Americanizing on WST Bombers Report.
They're going to bring in the fair catch now. Connor. You're going to stoke the fires of all these
unbelievable. But my point being the underthrows, and then there was a play in the fourth quarter as well, where Ontario Wilson is one-on-one down the sideline. Zach Collaros is taking a shot on that play, and he overthrows him by about 5 or 10 yards, and it's never a chance for Ontario Wilson. So the deep ball accuracy is something that we've seen from Zach Collaros be a strength. You know, you go back to the Hamilton game even, he had a ton of big completions. He had the deep rollout touchdown to Dylan Mitchell, dropped it right in the bucket. He can hit those, and we've seen Zach Collaros hit those. So where do you think that this kind of comes into play here? Do you think it's the O-line and he's not being able to step into his throws? Do you think his arm is weaker? And this is just who Zach Collaros is now, and maybe a little inconsistent with those. What do you make of the underthrown and overthrown, inaccurate either way, deep balls that we saw from Zach Collaros?
I'm glad you asked this, Connor, and you have a nose for what's the lead here. And I think it's the most important question that fans are asking themselves from this game. And I think it's a variety of things. You know, the O-line play hasn't been dominant like it used to be, but I don't think it's been the reason they are losing. Now, Zach was sacked once early in the game, and then he wasn't really touched. You know, that one on Demski is like you said, he didn't step into the throw. And from what I could see on the replay, because we watched it a few times on Bonfire, it looked like he could have stepped into the throw, but I think it was poor fundamentals. Like, I don't know if he felt like he was being rushed, like there was some pressure on him, Connor, but he throws off his back foot and he just doesn't get enough power on the ball, and it's easily picked off. So I think that one was on him, just didn't set his feet and throw it. Maybe misread the pressure coming in. Either way, he underthrows Demski there. You have the one that was even more concerning, and nobody's going to talk about it after our show because it resulted in potentially the best catch anybody's ever seen by Ontaria Wilson, 35-yard touchdown, which made it 25-20 in the fourth quarter, about 6 minutes left. Collaros has a very clean pocket, Connor, and he steps into that one, seemingly trying to throw it as far as he can. It's about 30. It's about a 50-yard throw. It needed to be 50 yards, and he threw it about 45. And so that's concerning when you have him step into the throw on a clean pocket. Wilson is open. He's not wide open, Connor, but he's open. I mean, he's more open than Dylan Mitchell was on that touchdown against Hamilton.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And he can't hit him. And then he overthrows Wilson. Now, some of that can be on the receivers. Like I think the one where he overthrows Stearns on 3rd and 4, I think they miscommunicated there. I think Stearns stopped his route and Zach expected him maybe to do more of a corner route. I'm not exactly sure. I think that one's tough because I'll just say this little nugget. On the CJOB post game, Doug Brown or Derek Taylor, they do a fabulous job, by the way. I listen to it on Audio Vault every time. But anyway, they asked Collaros, like, how was it to lose Demski? And Zach Collaros, all he said was, yeah, it was tough. Like kind of deadpan, very clipped, like almost insinuating like that's his go-to guy. Shona's gone, Demski's gone. Those guys almost never run the wrong route, or they're always on the same page with Collaros. I think that hurts. So I'll give Collaros a little bit of a pass there, but you have to wonder about his arm strength at this point, the inconsistency, Connor. The thing with Collaros is he's a gunslinger. He's always been a gunslinger. If there's 2 crossing routes open, he's going to throw the 30-yard crossing route, not the 15 or 10-yard crossing route. And when it works, he's brilliant. He's MOP quality. But when it doesn't work, it's horrible. And last night was horrible, whether it's because he didn't have good mechanics, whether he didn't have the arm strength, or whether he wasn't on the same page with his receivers. You mix that in with a tendency to gamble and throw bombs when the stuff underneath is open, it just doesn't work. And I'll go back to the 2nd and 4 play, the last Bombers drive, or second last. I guess they had 2 seconds left when they had a draw to Brady Oliveira for 29 yards at the end of the game. But he has Joey Corcoran wide open in the flat on 2nd and 4. And Corcoran probably picks up at least 12 to 15 yards there because there's nobody around him. But instead, he uncorks it to Wilson, who's about 25 yards downfield. Now, Wilson falls down, Connor, and I get that. But just doing the math, that's a lower percentage play when you can move the chains on a drive that could beat a team like Edmonton because you could get basically a walk-off touchdown there with the time they had left. He always goes for the deeper shot. And I think that's problematic, especially if he doesn't have that deep ball accuracy anymore. And people talk about arm strength, but there's leg strength too. And some people would argue that leg strength goes before arm strength for an aging quarterback or any football player for that matter, any athlete for that matter. And it's just not good. And I think it makes me queasy thinking about going into the playoffs. We'll get to this later. What are we going to get from this guy? Are you going to get last night, or are you going to get the game against Hamilton? Are you going to get the game against BC in week 3 where he didn't play great? Or are you going to get the game he played against Edmonton earlier in the season where he crushed it? So, man, I don't know. It's very frustrating. And it makes me not want to bet on the Bombers either because I lost big time taking the -3.5 on the road last night.
Yeah, I am with you. I thought that was well said on Zach Collaros, and he is a gunslinger, so it's more of a discussion for him as opposed to other quarterbacks with the loss of arm strength. Because Trevor Harris, I mean, he gets the ball out so quick. He throws short. He throws quick completions. It's not as big of an issue for a guy like him, where Zach Collaros is taking those deep shots time and time again. And it's something that the Bombers have been good at the last number of years, and they just haven't been as good. There was that play, the Nic Demski corner out in the first quarter as well, that Demski's sliding and just barely doesn't catch it. That was tough. That would have been a big play early in the game. And it's one that there were a lot of missed opportunities. We're going to talk about some of the play calls coming up in our buy or sell and question segments. We're going to talk about the 3rd and 4 that has been very highly discussed, let's say, where the Bombers and Zach Collaros took a deep shot, very on brand, on 3rd and 4 and incomplete, and that was the ball game. Before we do that, let's take a look at the CFL standings. Saskatchewan first. They've clinched the home West final, 12 and 4. BC's at the 2 seed at 9 and 7. Calgary's at the 3 seed at 8 and 8, or 9 and 7, excuse me. The Bombers are at 8 and 8 in the 4 seed and currently in the crossover position. And the Edmonton Elks are at 7 and 9 at the bottom of the West. Going over to the East, Toronto and Ottawa, their seasons are done. Montreal is second at 8 and 7. Hamilton first at 10 and 7. But Hamilton with 17 games played, Montreal with 15. We're recording this Sunday afternoon. And the Montreal Alouettes play Monday, if I'm not mistaken. They play Monday, Thanksgiving Monday. So we'll see what that ends up being. But the Bombers currently in the crossover position. As you see, Toronto and Ottawa are out. The Bombers are at 4th there in the West. But Edmonton right behind them, 1 win behind. The Bombers did secure the season tiebreaker over the Edmonton Elks in this game because they lost by less than 13. So the Bombers played the Elks in week 4. They won 36-23. And now the Bombers just need to win one of their last 2 games, or the Elks need to lose one of their final 2 games, and the Bombers will be in the playoffs. So their clinching scenarios are a win or an Elks loss in either of the final 2 weeks here. But the Bombers and Elks, if they finish with the same amount of wins, the Bombers will be in the playoffs, and looks like it could be at the crossover position. Zach, let's get to our segment, buy or sell. This is the segment where I pepper you with statements, questions, whatever about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and you let me know whether you're buying or selling. So let us know in the comments down below if you're buying or selling what I'm telling Zach. The first thing I'm going to tell you or ask you your thoughts on was the Ontaria Wilson catch, one of the greatest catches in CFL history.
Yes. I mean, yes. I hesitate to say it, Connor, because I am as you know, and you are too, a Blue Bombers diehard. So the incredible plays the Bombers players make are always going to stick out for us. Sure. But I mean, it was a miracle. First of all, it should have been picked off. It wasn't. It kind of goes up in the air, right? And it's underthrown, so Wilson has to battle back to the ball. He tips it up into the air with 2 guys on him twice. A 3rd DB comes in there once he catches it to try and get it away from him, and he somehow manages to keep it off the turf. The closest catch I've ever seen wasn't even in the CFL, it was in the NFL in Super Bowl 51 Julian with the Edelman catch.
Yeah, that's what I thought of too.
He double catches it, and Waiters last night was on that right away. He yelled it out. So credit to him. But I mean, it was an insane catch. It was a touchdown in a close game. So that gives it even more juice. And I was thinking back to other CFL catches that would parallel this or rival this. You think about that Carter one-handed interception in BC Place earlier this year. Yep. That was incredible. You think about the Duron Carter catch at Mosaic in 2017 from Kevin Glenn, where he bats it out of the air with one arm and then catches it with one hand. That was pretty incredible. Yeah. You think about, this is going way back, but some folks on social media pointed out to a Tony Champion touchdown in the 89 Grey Cup where he kind of catches it falling backwards and he had 2 broken ribs, and that was pretty special. And then, of course, the one that most people think is maybe the best catch of all time in the CFL is that S.J. Green catch in 2010. I was just about to say, in Calvillo against the Riders on a 2-pointer. Lots of Rider fans were biting back at me on social media saying he wasn't in bounds. But I think 15 years that later. I think the best catch of all time in any football league is the Odell Beckham Jr. One-hander against the Giants, or for the Giants.
Yeah.
I just think that was an incredible freak of nature one-handed catch, gravity defying. But I think for the CFL, based on the ones I've thrown out there, and there's probably others, Connor, there's the Eddie Brown Edmonton Elks touchdown catch against the Argos in the late 90s. This catch was, I think, right up there, and I'm having a hard time thinking that it's anything but maybe the best touchdown catch in CFL history.
Yeah, I tweeted out a clip of the catch, and my caption was just, I have no words. And I still struggle to find the words to describe. I mean, it's I'm glad you and Waiters brought up the Julian Edelman catch, because the parallels are so there. The defenders get a hand on it. It looks so improbable. They have to reach down and basically scoop it off the turf. I thought I thought it was incomplete in the moment, as I think all of us did, until they showed that slow motion replay kind of on the side. But you see Ontario Wilson's hand kind of hit the ground, and then the ball pops up, and that's where I thought that the ball hit the ground, and then the ball is popping back up. But you watch the replay, and it's just him with the strength and the concentration to grab the ball and kind of lift it back up for him to grab it. So one of the great concentration catches of all time. And it was so impressive in such a close game to put the Bombers back in it. And we've talked about the concerns and the underthrown deep ball aspect of it, but just looking at the catch, it's easily one of the best football catches in any league ever that I've ever seen. I know I haven't been watching football as long as some other people, but it is incredible. And I agree with you. The Odell Beckham one for the Giants is kind of, it's nostalgic. It's the one that gets played the most. You know, it gets kind of viewed. It gets acclaimed as the nicest catch in football, NFL history, if you will. But in CFL history, looking at this league, it's one of the best catches I've ever seen. So
it's insane.
Props
the body
to
control.
Oh yeah, the strength. Like a lot of receivers would quit on that play. You fight back to the ball, it gets tipped. Yeah. Oh, I don't know what happened. Go turn to the ref and complain for a flag or something. No, Ontario Wilson battled through it. Incredible play, and such a fun one to watch in a moment where the Bombers really needed a touchdown. So they figured it out and got a touchdown. That was really awesome. The next buy or sell, Zach, that I'm going to ask you is about the Bombers getting to the Grey Cup. This is something that we've talked about the last number of weeks. After the Hamilton win, we talked about it, and our hopes were high. I'm sure our hopes will be a little bit lower this week, but the Hamilton game happens. They beat the top team in the East 40-3. They look so impressive at home. Then they go into their bye, and now they come to Edmonton. Zach Collaros, there's concerns about him. They turn the ball over a ton. They give up a special teams touchdown. The run defense gets gashed by Justin Rankin, one of the best running backs in the CFL, and they lose. So where are you at? Are you buying or selling the Bombers still being a team that can maybe make a run in the playoffs and get to the Grey Cup?
I am. Now I'm putting in less chips into the middle of the table than I was last week. But there's still a path for this team, Connor, and not to, beat a dead horse here, but if Collaros makes better decisions, has better mechanics, if he's on the same page with his receivers, not throwing picks, this team can win any game. They've showed it all year. They lost to Calgary by a single point on the road on a walk-off field goal by Paredes. They went toe-to-toe with the Riders in Labor Day, only losing by 4 points, and we're within 2 points from tying that game. They crushed Hamilton, who's leading the East. They beat Montreal on the road, and I know it was James Morgan, their fourth stringer, playing quarterback, but that defense was legit. That was the Noel Thorpe Montreal defense, and they figured out a way to beat them. I do think that and they beat BC twice, right? I mean, they can. Even though I talked about how this score flattered the Bombers, good teams win games on the road that they shouldn't win. And there was a play in this game, Connor, where Zach Collaros maybe had his best deep ball of the game, and it was a beautifully schemed play by Jason Hogan, where Brady Oliveira was wide open on a go ball down the field. And if Collaros puts just a little more air on it, that's like a 90-yard touchdown that would have given the Bombers with the lead with 3:07 left. It unfortunately gets tipped just by a fingertip of the DB, and Oliveira can't come down with the catch. So the Bombers were close. They could have won this game, even though they didn't deserve to. And I think, and Cam Allen also dropped a potential pick six.
Yeah.
Right. You had Demski get injured. You have Vavel who gets injured. So you have that bad luck sort of return touchdown we talked about, which the Bombers needed to fall on there. So it's not like the Bombers got destroyed in this game. There is a path to victory, but they have to stop turning the ball over at this rate to even have a chance. They're probably going to, like by a miracle, they could have a home playoff game, but BC and Calgary would have to absolutely crap the bed. Mm-hmm. So they're going to go on the road. They're likely going to be fourth because Calgary has the tiebreaker on them, and I don't see BC slowing down. So then they have to go into Montreal probably for the first game and beat and some people are calling Montreal the best team in the CFL right now with Davis Alexander. So you got to go into that hornet's nest, beat the Alouettes. I think they have an easier time beating the Ticats if they can get through the Alouettes. But can they win those games? Absolutely, they can. Team could still make it to the Grey Cup, and they could still win the Grey Cup, Connor. I do believe that. Now, would I bet on it? Probably not, but there is a path to victory. It's just you don't know which team's going to show up. And the thing I will say about getting to the Grey Cup and winning it is I haven't seen, and you haven't, and nobody's seen the Bombers put together three-phase football games in a row this year. And so you're asking this team, who is 500 for a reason, they are what their record says they are, to put together three good, not even dominant, just three good games in a row where all three phases are clicking and they're not turning the ball over. Can they do that? Yeah, they could catch lightning in a bottle, but it's tough. It's tough to see it at this point.
It is. I thought that was well put, because they haven't done that this season yet. They haven't given confidence in a 3-game sample that they could be a team that can win the Grey Cup. But this is the crazy football league, and things like that have happened, right? Yeah. And this is where the crossover comes into play, and going to Montreal, and that would be really tough because, like you said, Montreal may be viewed as the best team in the CFL right now with Davis Alexander back, and you'd almost want to be in the West because Saskatchewan hasn't been great over the past month or so. So there's a lot at play here in the last couple of weeks in terms of playoff seeding, but the Bombers need to worry about getting into the playoffs first, as they need a win or an Elks loss in their final 2 weeks. Let's get to our next segment, Zach, before we talk briefly about the upcoming game for the Bombers, and that's the Blue Crew Review. This is the part of the show where we take questions from you, the fans, on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and we try and make sense of the losses, the wins, and all of the questions you have for us. So let me get to some of these questions here. The first one that I want to ask you about, Zach, is on the 3rd and 4. I said earlier that we'd talk about this later on in the episode. This question, the 3rd and 4-yard long bomb by Zach, was that the play that was called, or was that quarterback decision? Don't understand why short and intermediate routes weren't better options. They had enough time. Got me wondering how often the play we see is the one called, or is the QB kind of off sheet, off script, if you will. Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think Zach took that deep shot? We know he's a gunslinger. A few of the other routes on the play, from what I could see, were intermediate and shorter. It was a one-on-one play. Stearns, I think it was a miscommunication because the ball was nowhere near where he ended up. Just an ugly call and play all around for my money.
Yeah, no, it was ugly, and it was a good question by Trevor Hubert over on Twitter. So thanks for the question, yes. Trevor. Yeah. I think it's always a combination. My understanding of play calling on offense is, there's reads, right? There's your first read, second read, third read, fourth read, even fifth read. Your dump off if you're kind of in an emergency situation. And like kind of we were talking about before, we'd have to look back and really break down that 3rd and 4, but it looked ugly. And you'd think on a 3rd and 4, you just want to get the first down, right? So was there anything short or intermediate or even a Brady run that might have been more effective? Even if you're Peyton Manning, those long bombs are low percentage plays, because the ball has to travel in the air a long way. The DB can make a play on it. You're asking Jareth Stearns, who's 5'8", to save the game there, and it just didn't look good. My interpretation of Collaros is, like I said, is he's always going to take the deep ball. He's even when he shouldn't. And you could argue on 3rd and 4, you just have to move the chains. Mm-hmm. But he's always going to take the deep shot, and you live and die by that. It's worked for them, right, for many years, but it's not working now. I think this is a play where the loss of Demski really hurt, because he and Demski are always on the same page. So even if it was a long bomb, Demski's more likely to come down with that ball. Mm-hmm. But I think Zach, sometimes needs to be more patient and just take what's given to him instead of just launching it. And I think, when he was talking about it on the OB post game, I think he expected that corner to not be there. And then he said that he and Stearns weren't on the same page in terms of, I guess it's more of a choice route, they call it. Like you adjust your route based on the coverage. Mm-hmm. He was expecting Stearns to keep going. Stearns sort of turned it onto a curl or something, like just came back to the ball. So it just didn't work. And I think it's both play calling and decision making from Zach, because he always has different options on any play call.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think it's a little bit of a mix of both, and I disagree. We've put a lot of play calls under the microscope this season, Zach. When the Bombers threw deep against the Argos at home, and Chris Streveler was picked off on 1st down coming out of the 3-minute warning, all of the in field goal range, that was one of them. The 2nd and 3 against Ottawa, where Streveler goes in and pushes forward, and then they kick a 58 or 7-yard field goal. Surge misses, and the Red Blacks run it back. Like, there's been these plays throughout the season where you gotta have it. It's the biggest play of the game. It's one where you want your best play call, and the Bombers just haven't been close on a lot of them. And it's a cause for concern in the playoffs, because in the playoffs, those situations are going to happen even more so than they are in the regular season, where it's a big 2nd and 5, a big 2nd and 2, where maybe they're in their own end and Streveler's not an option or something like that. So this is something that has been a concern all year. It's going to continue to be a concern for us here on the WST Bombers Report, is the play calling.
Yeah, sorry, Connor. I just and in just rewatching that play, Dylan Mitchell is open. But when he launches that deep ball to Stearns, so Dylan Mitchell is open in the middle of the field by about 3 yards. Mm-hmm. If you throw it to Mitchell there, 99% you get the first down. He basically just has to keep his forward momentum, right? And so when the game is on the line and there's enough time on the clock to move the chains, he didn't have to go for it all there. They had enough time with the clock stoppages, right? He could have marched down the field more methodically,
right?
But and I don't think he trusts Dylan Mitchell, because he almost never gets the ball. That was the second time I noticed Mitchell was open and underneath route where he could have moved the chains. So I think that's on Collaros. I think he gets a bit greedy sometimes, and I think you just need to move the chains, take the easy throw. Collaros say what you will about his deep ball accuracy and his gunslinger mentality. He's very he's one of the most accurate QBs in the CFL, right? Take the underneath, high percentage play. I think that's on Zach, not the play calling.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do think that there are some opportunities for easy yardage that the Bombers and Zach Collaros more specifically are passing up in these games. So that's going to do it for the Blue Crew review. We're running a little long, so we got a question from BA Split as well. I'll give a shout out to BA. We talked about Zach earlier, and his question was mainly around Zach Collaros and the arm strength and the concerns there. So
we kind of touched on that.
We did kind of touch on that a little bit.
And I always promise you that I'm going to be faster on answering these questions, but then I get going and my ADHD takes over, and
lots to talk about.
What about that?
Lots to talk about. It's all good. I just want to save time for us to preview this upcoming game. Friday night, Princess Auto Stadium, October 17th. I'm sure it'll end up being sold out or very close to it. I hope it is sold out. I hope it's sold out for the streak to continue. But the Bombers welcome the first place 12-4, Saskatchewan Roughriders to Princess Auto Stadium. Banjo Bowl, Labor Day rematch, if you will. The Riders swept that, so the Bombers looking to get back at Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan with not much to play for since they've clinched first in the West. But I will offer this counter argument to people who think they might like rest starters or take this game lightly. They have something to play for. It's keeping their arch rivals potentially out of the playoffs. Like, I think that honestly might be enough for them to play their starters and play hard in this game. So we'll see. We'll see if I'm right on that. I will see throughout the week. Maybe they rest Trevor Harris or something like that. I don't know. But they have a few games. They have 2 more games, of course, before the end of their season. They play the Bombers, and then they play at home against BC in the final game. So maybe they save Trevor Harris for the home game if they want to get him in. They do have a bye. I don't know. The Bombers have had this question in the last number of years. If you sit Trevor Harris this week and next week, and then there's a bye, well, he's not playing football for like a month going into the West final, and he might be a little rusty, right? So he's got to play at some point. Yep. And if I'm viewing this from a Saskatchewan Roughriders perspective, you have a chance to keep your arch rivals potentially out of the playoffs if the Elks win out. I would take that chance and try and do it in their own barn and all of those things. So we'll see if Saskatchewan plays their starters. But otherwise, Zach, the matchup for the Bombers, what do they need to do to win this football game on Friday night?
In terms of the psychology of the game, Connor, I think you absolutely hit that out of the park. And I'm thinking of baseball metaphors because, of course, the Jays are playing the Mariners later today, game 1 of the ALCS, which is super exciting. But I think the Riders are absolutely going to come in dialed in. Now, are all their starters going to play? No, they're particularly banged up in the secondary. They've had a couple of receivers down. But Corey Mace stiff-armed that Gatorade shower. That's who was it? I forget which players it was. I think it was Micah Johnson and another guy. They tried to give him a Gatorade shower for beating the Argonauts this week to clinch first place, and Corey Mace wasn't having it. Nope. And he said in his post game, "We have a game to win next week." Well, next week is at Princess Auto Stadium on Friday night against the Bombers, and they have a chance to really hamper their arch rivals' chances to make the playoffs. Winnipeg is a team that's beaten them in the West Final, 3 times in the last 6 years, right? Like, they've broken the Riders' hearts. Of course they're going to come in fired up. So I think the Bombers are going to have to be in their P's and Q's. And if you're Saskatchewan, you have the first round bye. You have BC at home in the final game. That's probably, I think you're right, a time where maybe they rest some guys. They're not going to go 3 weeks without playing a meaningful game. It's just that's not how competitive teams work. I think the Riders are going to come in prepared. They're going to come in hungry. They want to sweep the Bombers, and they want to try and kick them out of the playoffs. The thing with the Riders, and listen, it all comes down to, I know football's the ultimate team game. There's 3 phases in football. Connor, this comes down to Zach Collaros. Like, I really firmly believe that. And maybe that's unfair. But if the Zach Collaros and the offense shows up that torched the Riders in Labor Day for 326 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, Zach only had 1 pick in that game, they can beat the Riders because the Riders allow the second most passing yards in the CFL. So they're banged up in the secondary. Guys like Tavon Campbell and Marcus Sales, right? God forbid they play XMA in there who Philpott torched to almost set a CFL record in receiving yards, right? So the yards are there, but here's the problem. I think, I'll let you had a good stat, but here's the problem. You can't run on the Riders. They're by far, by over 10 yards on average, the best rush defense in the CFL. They allow all these pass yards, Connor, but they have the lowest points allowed in the CFL. So, you can get chunk plays on them, but it's hard to turn it into points against this Riders defense. And so I think Collaros is going to have to be on point. He cannot put another performance forward at home like he did yesterday on the road. And if he, I'll give him 1 interception, but if he throws more than 1 pick, that's curtains for the Bombers next game. And hopefully Demski comes back. It looked like a hamstring, maybe. That's a tough one. We saw what happened with Davis Alexander in that hamstring.
Right.
They rushed him back. He missed almost the entire season, Connor. So if Demski isn't in there, now you're down Demski and Schoen, your two top receivers. You're going to have to rely. He's going to have to throw the ball to Mitchell. He's going to have to get Stearns open. He's going to hopefully Wheatfall can come back. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you have Ontario Wilson, who's turned into the number one receiver on this team.
Yeah. This is such a tough matchup for the Blue Bombers because of the Riders' run defense. And the stat that you alluded to there that the TSN broadcast mentioned against Edmonton was that the Bombers have the worst success rate in the CFL this year on 2nd and 7 or longer. So when the Bombers aren't getting to their run game, Brady Oliveira is not picking up 5 or 6 on first down. They're a really, ineffective offense, if you will. They're not picking up 2nd and 8s and 2nd and 12, and when they're losing yardage on first down. And that's tough for any team. But for the Bombers, with potentially without Nic Demski, which we'll see, stay glued to the injury report throughout the week, that could be a very, very tall task for them against the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Especially because, too, they give up all these pass yards, but they have the second most interceptions in the league, Connor. Mm-hmm. And that, again, bad matchup, like you put it perfectly for the Bombers. And then they have the most points off turnovers. So they're if they're gonna pick you off, or no, they have the third most points off turnovers. So and third most turnovers made. So they're gonna make you pay if you throw interceptions. And like I said, they're lucky that the Saskatchewan secondary is dinged up. And if I'm Corey Mace, I'm not rushing back any of those DBs for a fairly meaningless game, right? So they're there. And we should, I know we got to go, but we should mention that Saskatchewan D-line, right? They have pulverized the Bombers all year. Yeah. They have the second most sacks in the CFL. So, the O-line hasn't been the reason the Bombers have lost, but they're not the dominant O-line of a few years ago. So I think this is going to come down to Collaros being on point, but also coaching. I think when you have a bad matchup and it's kind of a must-win game, it's what are the coaches going to do to put a game plan together to, especially on offense. Hogan and Jarius Jackson, they're going to have to get Zach out of the pocket. They're going to have to give him some good hot reads, first reads when Saskatchewan invariably brings the blitz. Mm-hmm. I thought to Hogan's credit in the first half yesterday, Edmonton was blitzing seemingly on every play, and they had Collaros rolling out. They had some nice blitz beaters there, so they're gonna have to, I think, move the pocket. Even we talked about the run defense of the Riders. Well, I mean, when you throw a screen to your running back, that's almost an extension of the run play, if you will. So finding creative ways to get Brady in space, to get him the ball, so that he's not having to run up the A or B gap every single time, because that's just not going to work against the Rough Riders.
Yeah, I agree. That's why it's partly a bad matchup for the Bombers and why the Riders are 12-4 and the best team by record in the CFL. Now, if there's one silver lining, if you will, to playing a 12-4 one seed team, it's that since the sweeping of the Bombers, the Riders haven't been all that impressive. They lost 48-31 at home to Montreal. At the time, that was MBT at quarterback for the Alouettes. Then the Riders went on the road and lost to the Elks 27-25. Then they continued on the road and beat the Ottawa Redblacks narrowly 20-13. And then at home this week, they beat the Argonauts by 8 in a game that was very close against Jarrett Dagey, who kept the Argonauts in the game. So the Riders haven't been the big bad Riders that they were in the first half of the year over these past 4 weeks. I know they're 2-2 in these past 4 weeks, but I think they would admit it, and it's easy to say that they're not playing their best football. So maybe the Bombers are catching them at a little bit of a good time here. Not much to play for, not playing their best. This is a spot where the Bombers can maybe take advantage and get back in the win column and clinch a playoff spot at home against your arch rivals in front of a packed Princess Auto Stadium. We'll see what they can do there. And we'll have the breakdown next Monday right here on the WST Bombers Report. Zach and I will be back breaking down that game against the Rough Riders. Win or loss, submit your questions for the Blue Crew review on Twitter. Either Zach or I will post it. Lots of great questions this week. Thank you, everyone. And if you made it to the end of the video, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the WST Bombers Report and all the great Jets content we've got right here at Winnipeg Sports Talk as the season gets underway. But from Zach Schnitzer, I'm Connor Hrabchak. Thank you for watching the WST Bombers Report, and we will see you next Monday breaking down Bombers Riders.